Hello everyone and welcome to week 1 of Iceberg month. Yes, this is why I didn't really upload for a while. I've been working so hard on this project, and like the title of this series suggests, we're taking it back to the roots of the blow up of this channel. I can't say the roots of this channel because the roots of this channel is from 2013 and that was GTA videos, so I can't really say that. But we're taking it back to probably when you found me. And since we're talking about animal attacks, there will be some censorship, but for the most part there won't be because something I'm introducing with Iceberg month is 3D modeling. I can't actually show you guys the full-length videos of the animal attacks, so I did get a 3D modeler to help me out with this series. So throughout this entire series, we're gonna see exclusive 3D modeling made just for these scenarios. I thought I'd bring back icebergs because 1, you guys keep begging me for them, and 2, I made a name for myself now. This isn't Iceberg Boy anymore, this is Tuv. So yeah, I mean, why not? I'm not gonna spam these though. I mean, I'm gonna spam them this month because it's Iceberg month, and if this series goes well, yeah, I would love to bring it back every November. I think that would be so fun, but I'm getting ahead of myself there. I do want to thank you guys for being supporters of this channel. Maybe for a lot of you, it's been a while since you've seen my face or heard my voice, and make sure to subscribe with post notifications on. But I wanted to do something to celebrate for 4 years of being on YouTube. That's why I made a joke about this being my senior year of YouTube. Thank you guys so much for still watching my videos. I appreciate you guys. I also want to give a big thanks to the sponsors that keep this channel afloat. Today's sponsor is ZocDoc. Let's talk about finding a doctor that's right for you. Something so personal, but not a lot of people seem to talk about. So you know those moments when you're just on your phone, on your bed, and you don't even know how much time passes by. Then next thing you know, you're Googling random symptoms you have and end up worrying that something is wrong with your body. Trust me, we've all been there. Instead of spiraling at the middle of the night, convincing yourself that something's wrong with you, what if you could just book a real doctor? Someone in network with availability in the next day or two and who actually felt like the right fit. You see guys, that's the beauty of ZocDoc. You don't have to wait an hour on hold. You don't have to wait at a physical office. You can find and book a doctor instantly. Today's sponsor, ZocDoc, is a free website where you can easily search and compare high-quality in-network doctors so you can find the right doctor for you. And the best part? You can see the doctor's actual appointment openings, choose a time that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit. And ZocDoc isn't just for one type of care. They have more than 100,000 providers across nearly every specialty. From mental health to dental health, eye care to skin care, it's the one-stop shop for all your healthcare needs. Plus, it's completely free. So stop putting off those doctor appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/Tuv, which can also be found in the description, to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. With that being said, let's head on to the video. And before the actual topic does start, I do want to let you guys know that this iceberg will go from most tame to most gruesome, rather than like least known to most known. This is most tame to most gruesome, just like my older videos. With that being said, if you're not subscribed, don't subscribe yet. I will earn your subscription by the end of this video. Let's get right into the topic. The tip. Mick Fanning. Live shark encounter during the 2015 J-Bay Open, South Africa. So you're watching what's supposed to be the final of a professional surfing competition. It's July 19, 2015, and you're tuned into the J-Bay Open in South Africa. The waves are pumping, the sky's blue, and everything's perfect. Then, 3 minutes and 47 seconds into the heat, something appears behind one of the surfers that seems rather unbelievable and soon later horrific. A live shark basically attacks a surfer, and that surfer was none other than Mick Fanning, a 3-time world champion who was competing against Julian Wilson in what should have been just a regular surfing final. What happened was Mick was sitting on his board about to start paddling when he felt something come up behind him. In his own words later, he said, "I had this feeling that something was coming up behind me. That's when I got hit." The shark knocked him clean off his board and pulled him underwater. His leg rope snapped under the force. Millions of people around the world were watching this unfold live. For 15 seconds that felt like forever, nobody knew if Mick was still alive. The wave in the foreground blocked the view, and all you could see was thrashing water. People on the beach burst into screams and tears, certain they had just witnessed a man die. But Mick fought back. "I punched it in the back," he said afterward. Julian Wilson, who was further down the point, saw the whole thing happen and immediately started paddling at full speed towards the chaos, ready to use his board as a weapon. Mick described the encounter lasting about 10 minutes in his head, but the actual footage shows it was only about 10 seconds. I guess that's what adrenaline does to you. Time probably just slows down when you're fighting for your life. Anyway, when the jet ski finally reached him and Mick climbed on, giving that thumbs up, the entire surfing world exhaled. But of course he was shaken and so were other people. This caused the competition to be cancelled. Now the attack itself wasn't as brutal as it could have been, it's just one of those situations that makes your heart skip a beat. And just for context, looking at the specific attack at our starting point, we're still in relatively tame territory for what's coming. Partly because Mick walked away without a scratch. Just a small pressure ding on his board and a broken leash. WSL officials, however, took the incident seriously and even investigated and reported that there were actually 2 sharks in that area, making it the first time in surfing history a competitor had encountered multiple sharks during an event. Mick got incredibly lucky that day. Humpback whale swallows kayaker. Early this year, February 8th to be exact, 24-year-old Adrian Simancas was out kayaking with his father in the pristine waters of southern Chile's Strait of Magellan. Just picture them out paddling along, probably enjoying the scenery, when suddenly the ocean seems to explode beneath Adrian. Yes, I'm using the word explode here because I don't know how else to describe a whale swallowing you coming up from the ocean. I don't know. So like I said, what came up exploding from the water wasn't a wave, it was a 40-ton humpback whale, and unfortunately, Simancas was about to become the main course. His father caught the whole terrifying encounter on camera. 1 second Adrian's paddling along, the next he has completely disappeared in the whale's mouth. "I thought I was dead," Adrian said afterward, and honestly, watching the video, you'd think the same thing. The whale bursts out of the water, its massive mouth opens, and Adrian just vanishes. The whale didn't hold on to him long, maybe 2 or 3 seconds before spitting him back out. The good thing is, humpback whales don't actually swallow humans. Their throats are only about the size of a dinner plate, designed for filtering tiny krill and small fish. So while Adrian felt like he was being eaten alive, the whale was probably just as shocked as he was. Wildlife scientist Vanessa Pirota explained that the whale was likely lunge feeding, basically opening its massive mouth and taking in thousands of gallons of seawater to filter out food. Adrian just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. When Adrian popped back up, you can hear his father yelling, "Grab the boat," as his son swims frantically towards the safety of the raft. The whale, meanwhile, arched its spine and dove back down like nothing had happened. Interestingly, the Strait of Magellan is actually a popular tourist destination for exactly this kind of wildlife encounter. The government's tourism website advertises kayaking with dolphins and humpback whales as a featured activity, but nobody mentions the possibility of accidentally becoming part of a whale's lunch. Tourist boat attacked by territorial hippo. So we're stepping things up a notch here. If you thought the other two were the only things you should worry about the ocean, which would be dumb. No, here's another reason to be scared of the water, I should say, not the ocean. Meet the hippopotamus. And honestly, this might be the most underestimated killer on the planet. Last year in the Chobe River in Namibia, Africa, a group of tourists were enjoying what should be a peaceful river cruise when they spotted some hippos bathing in the water. Nice scenery, right? Well, yes, but it would soon turn horrific. One of the tourists, Jackie Boshoff, is probably never going to forget what happened next. One of the male hippos suddenly turned towards their boat. This 2-ton killing machine decided their boat was a threat, and when a hippo makes that decision, you're in serious trouble. The thing about hippos is that they can hit 30 miles per hour in the water. So when this massive bull started charging, the skipper immediately took off, trying to escape. But there was a problem. They were in shallow water. The propeller kept hitting the bottom and they couldn't get the speed they needed. So the hippo caught up, launching itself at their boat and clamping down on their rear motor with jaws that could snap a crocodile in half. Regarding the attack, Jackie later said, "You hear and read about this stuff, never thinking it could happen to you." But there she was, watching this prehistoric looking beast literally trying to destroy their only means of escape. The engine was getting torn apart by teeth designed to crush bone. Now, according to the Independent report, the attack was likely triggered by the male protecting a calf in the area. They were lucky this time because actually, hippos kill more people in Africa than almost any other large animal, more than lions and more than crocodiles. These things are responsible for around 500 human deaths every year. The surface. Tamari SeaWorld orca attack. Most people know about the SeaWorld trainer who was killed by an orca, but there is another attack fully captured on camera. The year was 2002 at SeaWorld San Diego, and 28-year-old trainer Tamari Tolleson was working with 2 killer whales, Orchid and Splash. So she sat sitting at the edge of the pool, dangling her legs in the water like she'd probably done hundreds of times before. Then, without warning, both orcas grabbed her and dragged her underwater. This video was captured by the tourists there, and no other trainer had any idea that this was happening. Horrific, and Tamari was probably thinking she was gonna die. But as she fought for her life underwater, her coworkers had become aware and responded and were frantically trying to get everything to get the whales to release her. But unfortunately, the 2 orcas weren't responding to any of the commands or signals. They were, quote, refusing all attempts to be called back. That's when Robin Sheets made a desperate decision that could have either saved Tamari or made everything infinitely worse. He released Kasaka, the more dominant orca, from her enclosure. It was an incredible gamble, but Sheets understood orca hierarchy, and he was betting that Splash and Orchid would be more concerned about the dominant whale entering their space than continuing their attack. And the gamble actually worked. Only when they sensed Kasaka might join them did they finally let go of Tamari's ravaged body. The attack left her with a compound fracture of the forearm, but she was alive. Now, it is important to note that Orchid wasn't a one-time offender. This whale had a 25-year history of attacking trainers at SeaWorld. In 2006, she attacked another trainer during a routine medical procedure, drilling her in the chest with her rostrum and knocking her over an elevated wall, leaving the trainer unconscious. But SeaWorld kept using her in shows. West Park dog attack. Even man's best friend can turn deadly when things go wrong. This case actually happened this year on August 26th. This was in West Park, Florida. An unidentified man is taking a walk through his neighborhood near Southwest 38th Street and 58th Avenue when his afternoon stroll becomes a fight for survival. 3 dogs, pit bulls, come charging at him, and what follows is captured on a neighbor's Ring camera in disturbing detail. The footage shows the man desperately trying to escape, first jumping onto a utility box, then climbing a palm tree. But these dogs weren't giving up. They keep attacking, gnawing at his arms and legs as he falls to the ground. He's yelling out in agony while the pack's loud barks echo through the neighborhood. Alberto Dominguez, who lives nearby, heard the screaming and knew something was seriously wrong. When he rushed to help, he found the victim bloodied but fortunately conscious. He was hospitalized with significant injuries. The thing is, this wasn't the first time these same 3 dogs attacked a human. Just over a month earlier, Juan Echevarria was mauled by the same 3 pit bulls in the exact same neighborhood. He fell while trying to fend them off and damage his wrist in the process. Of course, this man reported that first attack to the authorities. Quote, "They didn't take away the dogs. They just issued a citation," he said. "I told them it's gonna happen again. They don't care." And he was right. It did happen again. The dogs were getting loose regularly because there was a hole underneath the fence in their yard. The owners knew their dogs were vicious, neighbors knew they were dangerous, and yet nothing was done until someone else got mauled. So after the second attack, something was finally done to the dogs. The owner's boyfriend voluntarily surrendered all 3 dogs and they were euthanized. But it shouldn't have taken 2 separate maulings to get to that point, right? The body. 32-year-old woman climbed into polar bear exhibit, Berlin Zoo. Now we're getting into territories where survival becomes a lot less certain, because what we're about to talk about includes someone making a decision that defies all logic and nearly cost them their life. So it's April of 2009 in Berlin Zoo, Germany. It's feeding time at the polar bear enclosure, and visitors are watching these massive predators do what they do best, hunt and eat. Then a 32-year-old woman identified only as Mandy K makes a choice that makes no sense. She climbs over the fence, pushes through a line of hedges, scales a wall, and jumps directly into the polar bear enclosure. Again, during feeding time, when the bears are most aggressive. This photo sequence shows what happened next. Mandy lands in the bear's moat, and immediately one of the 4 polar bears dives in after her. The bear starts attacking her, repeatedly biting her rear end, her arms, her legs. Then she's thrashing in the water, desperately trying to grab life preservers and ropes that panicked zookeepers are throwing down at her. At one point, they actually manage to pull her partway out, but she falls back in. The bear immediately goes after her again because, remember, these are vicious predators and to their eyes, she's food. And I mean that in every sense. Polar bears are some of the largest predators on Earth. We're talking about animals that can weigh up to 1,500 pounds, with paws the size of dinner plates and claws that can slice through steel like paper. The only reason Mandy survived is that the bears had probably already been fed. They were essentially playing with her rather than actively trying to kill her. But make no mistake, this was not gentle at all. She had severe lacerations to her arms, legs, and back. 6 zookeepers had to work together to distract the 4 bears while they pulled her to safety. But then there's an even more disturbing layer to this story. It later emerged that Mandy was a teacher who couldn't find work, and she'd been driven by despair to what she did. So this wasn't just someone making a bad decision, this was someone's way of just saying goodbye. She spent weeks in the hospital recovering from surgery on her wounds. She got cited for trespassing, and the zoo considered legal action against her. But honestly, I think surviving a polar bear encounter during feeding time is redemption enough. Elephant trampling attack in India. Sometimes the most dangerous animal encounters happen when the tourists forget they're dealing with wild animals that can weigh up to several tons and have zero patience for what humans might consider playfulness. And this is one of those cases. It happened in Bandipur National Park in Karnataka in India. Here you can see traffic backed up because an elephant has decided to snack on produce from the top of a trunk, and for 20 to 30 minutes everyone's keeping their distance like they should. But then lack of patience kicks in, and 2 cars decide to try sneaking past while the elephant is distracted. Huge mistake. The elephant immediately gets nervous, and that's when things go completely sideways. A man identified as R. Basavaraju apparently tries to take a selfie with the massive animal, probably using a camera flash that startled the already agitated elephant. The footage of what happens next is absolutely brutal. The elephant charges across the road in front of a moving car, trunk swinging, headed straight for the man. He turns and runs, but you can't outrun a pissed off elephant. They can hit speeds of 25 miles per hour, and this one's on a mission. The man stumbles and falls on the busy road, and the elephant catches up. It stomps on him several times, actually managing to rip off his pants and underwear during the attack. We're talking about an animal that weighs between 8,000 and 14,000 pounds, putting its full weight on a human body. The man remained on the ground for 3 to 5 minutes after the attack, but the fact that he got up at all is miraculous. The attack only ended when 2 vehicles from the nature reserve arrived with sirens and loud sounds to scare the elephant away. Once it left, traffic slowly returned to normal, and the man was rushed to the hospital with severe injuries. He survived, but only because he got incredibly lucky that the elephant decided to move on rather than finishing the job. Travis Kaufman, mountain lion attack. Back in 2019, a man faced one of nature's most feared predators in a fight to the death, and the scars across his face tell the story of how he survived what should have been unsurvivable. This is Travis Kaufman, and his encounter with a mountain lion was a 10-minute battle where only one would walk away. At the time of the attack, Travis was a 31-year-old trail runner and was about halfway through what was supposed to be a routine 12 to 15 mile run through Horsetooth Mountain open space. He descended from a ridge and was running along a narrow section of the trail when he heard pine needles rustling behind him. Most of the time, he wouldn't even turn around, probably just a deer or a squirrel. But that time, something made him look back. About 10 feet away, staring directly at him, was a mountain lion. He did exactly what you're supposed to do. Threw his arms up, started yelling, trying to make himself look bigger and more intimidating. But this young cat wasn't backing down. It lunged straight at him. The lion's jaws locked onto Travis's wrist and stayed there for the entire fight. Its front claws dug into his back while it wrapped itself around his body. As they struggled, both of them tumbled 20 feet off the trail into a gully, turning this into a wrestling match for survival. Travis, who'd recently become a cat owner, knew how dangerous a cat's back legs could be, so he used his left knee to pin down the lion's hindquarters while it continued tearing at his face with its claws. Blood was streaming down from multiple puncture wounds as he desperately tried to find something, anything, to defend himself with. He grabbed sticks and tried stabbing the cat in the throat, but they were rotten and kept breaking. Then he found a rock and started smashing it into the lion's head, but the angle was all wrong, with his wrist still trapped in its jaws. He figured that after landing a couple of good hits to the back of its head and it's still not letting go, he'd have to do something more drastic. That's when he let out what he calls a barbarian yell, and he managed to get his right foot onto the lion's neck. He held it there until the lion died. After a couple of minutes, quote, it finally stopped moving and then the jaws opened. Only when the cat was dead did it release its grip on his wrist. At the hospital, doctors gave him 19 stitches across his cheek, 6 along the bridge of his nose, and another 3 in his wrist. His face was covered in puncture wounds from the cat's claws and teeth. The Abyss. Fatal shark attack in Israel. This one actually happened a few months ago. April 21st of 2025 at the Mediterranean waters off Hadera, Israel, near the country's biggest power station. The warm waters attract both fish and the sharks that hunt them. Sandbar and dusky sharks that locals have grown surprisingly comfortable with. Too comfortable, as it turns out. Mobile phone footage shows multiple sharks circling swimmers in the shallow water, including young children. But instead of panic, people are actually trying to pet these predators. One unidentified man stays in the water, seemingly fascinated by these massive animals swimming just feet away from him. Then everything changes in seconds. The man suddenly starts waving his arms frantically above the water, screaming help and "they're biting me," as onlookers watch in frozen terror. Someone calls emergency services, desperately telling them that, quote, there's someone here that a shark has bitten. Olga Beach was already a prohibited swimming area, specifically because of the shark presence. The Israel Nature and Parks Authority had issued warnings against interacting with sharks, calling them protected animals that should be avoided at all costs. This was only the 4th shark attack in Israeli history since 1948, so it's actually an incredibly rare event. But the rarity probably contributed to people's overconfidence, because unlike our previous cases, there's no happy ending here. Police found remains the next day and sent them to the National Center of Forensic Medicine for identification. The search involved every available resource, but it was too late. And even during the rescue efforts, one of the divers was attacked. Police spokesperson Aria Doron emphasized they were, quote, committed to doing everything they can to bring closure to the family, but the brutal reality is that there wasn't much left to find. When multiple sharks attack in open water, the outcome is almost always fatal. San Francisco Zoo tiger attack. Some of you might remember Christmas Day 2007 at the San Francisco Zoo, and I say some of you because here on the main channel, I understand that we do have older audience. So yeah, some of you might remember this, and some of you might have been born in 2007 or even after. Alright, but either way, we're about to talk about it right now. It all started because some teenagers apparently thought it would be fun to taunt a 243-pound Siberian tiger. Later that afternoon, most visitors had already left the zoo. Someone reported seeing young men roaring at the lions, but nobody mentioned anything unusual happening at the tiger exhibit. An hour later, one 17-year-old boy and one tiger were dead. Tatiana was a 4-year-old female Siberian tiger who had been at the San Francisco Zoo for 2 years. Her enclosure had safely contained tigers for over 65 years. A 29-foot wide dry moat that was 12 feet 9 inches deep, surrounded by walls that should have been impossible for any big cat to scale. But on this day, Tatiana did the impossible. The 3 victims were Carlos Sosa Jr., age 17, and brothers Colbert Dhaliwal, age 23, and Paul Dhaliwal, age 19. Federal investigators later found sticks and pine cones inside the tiger exhibit, suggesting someone had been throwing objects at Tatiana. Paul later admitted to police he'd been drunk and yelling and waving at the animal. But how could an animal jump over a wall that big? Claw marks found near the top of the enclosure wall showed exactly how she'd escaped. She was using her hind legs to gain the traction needed to pull herself out. One successful leap from a 243-pound killing machine that had finally had enough. What happened next was a nightmare that unfolded in less than 20 minutes. Paul heard rustling in the bushes as they walked away from the exhibit. The tiger was out and she was hunting. Colbert and Carlos reportedly tried to stop Tatiana from mugging Paul, but the tiger turned on Carlos. The attack was fatal. Then, instead of staying with her kill like most big cats would, Tatiana followed the brothers' blood trail 300 yards through the zoo. She even passed other exhibits with animals she could have attacked but ignored them all, focused entirely on the two brothers. Meanwhile, these two reached the Terrace Cafe, desperately calling for help. At 5:21 p.m., Colbert called 911, but the initial response was chaos. Zoo employees didn't believe what they were hearing, with one even saying, "I don't know if they're on drugs or what. They're screaming about an animal that has attacked them, but there's no animals out." More than 6 minutes passed before the zoo staff realized the brothers were telling the truth, and even then, security kept police and paramedics out for another 5 minutes because of safety protocols. And while this was happening, Tatiana found the brothers outside the cafe. When police finally arrived, Officer Daniel Cruz saw the tiger sitting next to Colbert. Then she attacked him for some seconds, then stopped, and that was when the police opened fire against her. Although some say this wasn't her fault, that she had been pushed past her breaking point, and when she finally snapped, she made sure the people responsible paid the ultimate price. Horatio Chapel polar bear attack. On August 5, 2011, Horatio Chapel, an Eton schoolboy hoping to study medicine, was in remote Von Post Glacier in Svalbard, Norway. It was an expedition organized by the British Schools Exploring Society, but there he became the victim of institutional negligence that left him defenseless against one of the Arctic's most dangerous predators, a polar bear. The warning signs had been there for days. Lauren Beach, another person on the trip, remembered finding huge polar bear footprints, but it didn't make her worried. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that would definitely worry me. I don't know why she wasn't worried. At the same time, there were device failures that plagued this expedition. The tripwire alarm system designed to warn of approaching bears was defective with missing parts. The party had tried to fix it using paper clips. The rifle they carried was a World War II era Mauser 98K that expedition leaders had received minimal training on. Also, there weren't enough pen flares. And for clarity, these are devices that shoot flares 50 meters to frighten bears, and also only team leaders had access to them. Horatio's father would later say they were left with just their bare hands to fight off. So at 7:30 a.m. that morning, a 24-year-old polar bear, hungry, in pain from bad teeth, and made aggressive by these conditions, approached the camp undetected. The tripwire system failed when the bear knocked over a supporting post, causing the cartridge to fall out without detonating. Scott Bonnell Smith was sharing a tent with Horatio, and he described being woken up by the shaking of the tent. He thought someone was trying to wake them, but then the tent was ripped to shreds. Matthew Burke was in a different tent and heard someone scream that there was a bear. So when he looked out, he just saw Horatio in his boxer shorts being savaged. The bear backed up and then came crashing down on him, smashing him with its paws. It mauled his head, face, and neck. The last one was the injury that tragically caused his death. Trip leader Michael Reed grabbed the group's rifle and tried to help, but it jammed. Bullets just fell to the ground. The bear then turned on him, sinking its teeth into his head. Andrew Ruck, the mountain leader, tried to distract the animal by charging and throwing rocks at its face. The bear knocked him down and swiped his face with its claws. Finally, Reed found one of the fallen rounds, loading it into the rifle, and shot the bear dead. Now, I can't show you guys the actual photo, so I'm going to show you guys the pixelated version of the photo, but there is an image of the dead polar bear being taken away. Wes Perkins bear attack. When people talk about surviving the impossible, they're usually exaggerating. But what happened to 65-year-old Wes Perkins in the Alaskan wilderness in 2011 really is barely surviving the impossible. Perkins was a former fire chief from Nome, Alaska, out on what should have been a routine hunting trip with his friend Dan Stang and Dan's son Edward. They'd spotted a nice-sized grizzly bear in the distance and were tracking it through the mountains when the animal seemed to just disappear. What they didn't realize was that the bear had dug itself a hole and was hiding in the willows waiting. Perkins was walking just behind Edward when he stopped, not realizing the bear was only 70 feet away. Then, without warning, an 8-foot grizzly came charging straight at him. Quote, "I turned and saw the bear, full charge," Perkins later told the Anchorage Daily News. Then the grizzly tore off most of Perkins' face, his jaw, his tongue, nearly all his teeth. Dan Stang looked back and saw the bear on top of him and immediately grabbed his gun to shoot the animal. Perkins remained conscious throughout the entire attack. As his face was being ripped apart, he kept telling himself to, quote, "function and never close my eyes or go unconscious." When Dan rolled him over after the bear was finally killed, his whole face was, and I quote, "rolled right off." But Perkins was still awake, still aware. And then he did something that probably saved his life. He started digging debris out of his own mauled throat just so he can breathe better. Or I should say, to breathe at all. Dan pushed Perkins' face into the snow to numb what was left and radioed for help. In an incredible stroke of luck, the first person to respond was Perkins' own brother, who immediately contacted a rescue helicopter. His condition was really bad, but it wasn't until at the hospital that they knew the extent of his injuries was catastrophic. The bear had ripped off most of his jaw and tongue and caused massive damage to one of his eyes. Doctors told him he might never be able to eat or drink through his mouth again. Perkins spent the next 4 months in the hospital, undergoing countless surgeries. Surgeons inserted titanium plates in both cheeks and a titanium rib around his jawbone. They took his left fibula from his lower leg and literally constructed a new jaw out of bone. 10 years have passed since then, and he now looks like this. The Dark Abyss. Thailand lion attack. We're now at the absolute bottom of our iceberg. This is a safari in Bangkok, and on September 10th of this year, tragedy struck in a bizarre manner. Jian Rangkasamy was 59 years old and had been working with animals for 30 years. He'd been at the Bangkok Safari Park since 2019, experienced enough to know the rules, experienced enough to understand the dangers. But sometimes experience isn't enough when you're dealing with predators that can take your life in seconds. That Wednesday morning around 11 a.m., Rangkasamy was driving through the lion enclosure when he spotted some trash on the ground. It seemed like a simple task: step out of the Jeep, pick up the debris, get back in. The park had rules in place barring anyone from getting out of their vehicles, but maybe he thought his experience made him the exception. The lion was about 30 feet away, then crept up and grabbed the zookeeper from behind, dragging him to the ground and sinking its teeth in. But it didn't end there. This wasn't a quick kill. Within moments, 3 or 4 other lions piled on, turning it into a full-on feeding frenzy. Tourists were right there, filming every horrifying second. The ordeal lasted around 15 agonizing minutes before staff could reach him. 15 minutes of conscious suffering as multiple lions tore into his flesh. Panicked visitors screamed and honked their horns, desperately trying to scare the lions away. But the big cats ignored everything except their prey. Fellow zookeepers, not wanting to get close to the danger, could only blast car horns in a futile attempt to help. By the time the zoo staff were finally able to intervene with guns, it was far too late. Hospital staff reported that Rangkasamy had suffered multiple broken bones and the majority of his flesh was damaged or missing. The lions had literally bit and chewed on his body until his bones were exposed, leaving his lifeless remains as a puddle of blood. This was just a man who made one small decision that cost him everything, while tourists watched him get devoured alive and recorded it for the world to see. Portuguese bullfighter death. At the very bottom of our iceberg lies a case that shows how sometimes humans deliberately put themselves in harm's way, and when it goes wrong, the outcome is as brutal as it is unpredictable. Or maybe you would say it's predictable. I mean, you're a bullfighter. I would say one of the dumbest things to ever do, but with that being said, let's get on with the story. This is the Campo Pequeno bullring in Lisbon, Portugal. Nearly 7,000 spectators had gathered to watch the 22-year-old Manuel Maria Trindade making his debut as a forcedo, a Portuguese bullfighter whose job is to grab charging bulls by the horns and stop them with nothing but skill and courage. Yes, it is just like how it sounds. So Trindade stood there, facing a 1,500-pound bull, locked in the ceremonial stare-down. He took off running towards it, but then hesitated at the last second as the massive animal charged back. That split-second hesitation ended up costing him everything. As Trindade tried to grab the bull's horns to slow it down, the animal instead hoisted him up and carried him all the way to the other side of the ring. What followed was a prolonged, brutal attack as the bull continued mauling the helpless young man while he laid sprawled on the ground. Other bullfighters ran out desperately trying to help, but they couldn't stop the assault. The bull was in full attack, and Trindade was completely at its mercy. They eventually managed to distract the animal by pulling on its tail and shining lights in its eyes, but the damage was already done. Paramedics rushed to treat him, but Trindade had suffered traumatic head injuries, so he was declared brain dead. He also suffered cardiorespiratory arrest and died the next day. And unlike accidents or attacks where people were in the wrong place at the wrong time, this was a calculated risk, or more of a deliberate choice with huge gamble. I mean, the whole thing is about entering the arena with a massive predator and playing hit or miss with it for the entertainment of thousands. Like I said, I think it's a really dumb hobby or job, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's going to wrap up our last one for today's iceberg. Alright guys, I hope I earned your guys' subscriptions if you are not subscribed already, and make sure to stay tuned in for Iceberg Month. If you liked the video, make sure to leave a like on the video, and go watch my past videos. Go out, there'll be a playlist for Iceberg specifically if you want to watch that. There'll be a playlist for hour-long videos. Oh yeah, turn on notifications, even if it is just for Iceberg Month. Turn them on, and comment first. It's engagement when you guys do that, so it's cool. And I will see you guys next time I upload.